So in this video, I'm going to discuss Newton's second law of motion, and we'll eventually see that Newton's second law is also valid for an inertial frame of reference. In the earlier video of Newton's first law, I've already discussed inertial frames of reference. So from now on, this while discussing this Newton's second law of motion, you should keep in mind that it is also an equation that is valid for an inertial frame of reference. And then we will discuss in the later video how to, or maybe in this video itself, depending on the length of the video, I will judge whether I will extend this video and then include the application of Newton's second law while while observing from a non-inertial frame of reference, and we will see how cleverly we will use Newton's second law from based like that is developed for inertial frame of reference, and then we will use that property to develop a term, or we will name a term that is called as pseudo force, and then that will help us to apply Newton's second law even though we are analyzing from non-inertial frame of reference. So first of all, Newton's second law. So it says that it says that summation f equals to m times a, where summation f is the total resultant force, mass of the body, this one is acceleration of the body or system, total resultant force on the body or system. So eventually Newton's second law says that R summation f equals to m d2r by dt square, where r is the position vector. So let's say position vector from an inertial frame of reference. So let's suppose this one O X Y Z is an inertial frame of reference, and there is a point particle with or let's say delete this one. There is a point particle with position vector r. So this one is this r is the position vector of the point mass particle from an inertial frame of reference. So eventually we will see that Newton's first law is can be basically deducted from Newton's second law of motion. So we will see this. Let's say now what is Newton's first law of motion? That Newton's first law as deducted from second law. So Newton's first law, if we set like summation F equals to m d2r by dt square. So Newton's first law says that if sum of all the external forces acting on the body F equals to 0, so what will happen? So then m d2r by dt square will be 0. This implies that d2r by dt square is equal to 0. This means that d by dt of dr by dt equals to 0. This implies that dr by dt equals to constant, which implies that velocity equals to constant. So we can see that this constant velocity, this constant velocity can be 0 or non-zero. So we can see that what we can conclude from this result, that if summation F equals to 0, this implies that velocity equals to 0 or velocity equals to non-zero but constant. So eventually this is what we know from Newton's first law, right? That if the net external force, resultant force acting on a body or system is 0, then that system or body is either at rest or moves with a constant linear uniform velocity. So yeah, so now this Newton's second law, this one is valid for an inertial frame of reference. So now let's see like how we can develop techniques to apply Newton's second law in non-inertial frames of reference also. So eventually that will enforce us to define something called as pseudo force. And basically pseudo force is nothing but a consequence of applying Newton's Newton's second law in non-inertial frames of reference. So pseudo forces and Newton's second law. So let's say this one is OX, this one is OXYZ. So this one is inertial frame of reference, and I am defining non-inertial frames as O dash, X dash, Y dash, Z dash, and I'll define the point mass particle as this one, and the position vector will be something like this, R vector, this will be R dash vector. So basically this particle is P. So basically this same particle has a position vector as defined from an inertial frame of reference, that is R, and a position vector of R dash is defined as measured from non-inertial frame of reference O dash x dash y dash z dash. So now since we know that basically fundamentally Newton's second law is valid from can be only applied from inertial frames of reference, that is Newton's, what we know first of all, question, what we know about second law. Answer is it is valid for an inertial frame of reference. So in that case we will apply Newton's second law in inertial frame of reference O x y z. So in that case I'll define summation f equals to m d2r upon dt square, where f is the total external forces acting on mass particle P as observed, or let's delete this part. So yeah, so this one is the summation f is the total external forces acting on mass particle P, and this R is position vector of P as measured from OXYZ inertial frame. So but you see that we can define R, position vector R, as that is R, let's say, sorry, first delete this one. Okay, so we can basically define OP vector equals to O dash vector plus O dash P vector, and this one I can call, let's say, A vector. So in that case OP is R equals to O dash, that is A vector, plus O dash P, that is R dash vector. So now we will take d2 double derivative, d2r by dt square, or let's say single derivative only, first time single derivative. So dr by dt equals dA by dt plus dr dash by dt. This is eventually the relation between this dr by dt represents the velocity, that is velocity of the particle as observed from inertial frame of reference VPO, equals to is velocity of the frame O dash with respect to O plus dr dash by dt is velocity of the particle p with respect to O dash. So you can see that there is a uh, velocity relation that we are getting from those Poisson vector derivatives. So what eventually it tells is whatever the velocity that is measured for from an inertial frame of reference of the particle p will be eventually the sum of this velocity vector of the non-inertial frame O dash, X dash, Y dash, Z dash, and this uh, the velocity of the particle as observed from a non-inertial frame of reference O dash, X dash, Y dash, Z dash. And eventually, when we will take one more derivative, then we will get oh sorry. So in that case, we will get let's take one more derivative. In that case, dvpo by dt will be equals to dvo dash o by dt plus dvpo dash by dt. So I will go little bit down and then I will express the same expression. dvpo by dt equals to dvo dash o by dt plus dvpo dash by dt. So eventually this one is the relation between acceleration as observed from an initial frame of reference OXYZ. This one is basically acceleration of PO equals to as observed from inertial frame of reference OXYZ. This one is basically AO dash O, that is the this one, the acceleration of this sorry, I don't know what happened. So basically the acceleration of this frame of reference as observed from an inertial frame of reference OXYZ. Yeah. Okay, so this one is AO dash O plus this one is acceleration of the particle P as observed from this one, this non-inertial frame of reference O dash, X dash, Y dash, Z dash. So, and one more important point that I forgot to discuss is that while taking those derivatives, like while taking this derivative from this derivative to this and all this thing, especially this part, so eventually this is valid because this one is we are assuming that this O dash X dash Y dash Z dash frame, that is a non-inertial frame, is translating with respect to this with respect to this inertial frame of reference O X Y Z dash. So what does that mean? So that means that that means that this O X Y Z frame, this O dash X dash Y dash Z dash frame. So let's say that this is at t equals to 0. This is the situation, this is the condition, this is the the position of this non-inertial frame of reference O dash X dash Y dash Z dash at t equals to 0. At a later instant of time, at t equals to any delta t, so it will still be oriented in the same way, that is the X dash, the Y dash and the Z dash directions are basically like keeping the orientation same as their previous orientation. So that means that they are just translating wherever they are going, they are just translating. Yeah, that is the most important point. We are discussing frame translation. We are discussing frame translation for now. This one is called frame translation. So it may the second this frame may have some variable velocity v, but the frames will keep intact, the non-inertial frame will keep intact its orientation with respect to its initial position. So this is what is called frame translation. And whatever the equation that I have written, this one is valid for the case of frame translation. So eventually we will see that, okay, so this one, or we can write this equation as a d2 d2 rpo, right, p r, this one is r dash, this one is a d2 rpo equals to d2 by dt square of o dash plus position vector d2 r dash by dt square. So eventually we will use this equation and substitute in our earlier equation of Newton's second law. Since Newton's second law is valid only for is valid only for an inertial frame of reference, so we will use that equation into this one. So what will happen, let's see. So in that case, summation f equals to m d2r by dt square, that is equals to m d2 r po by dt square, that is equals to m d2 by dt square of o dash plus d2 r dash by dt square, or summation F equals to m d2 by dt square of o dash plus m d2 r dash by dt square. So you can see one amazing point about this Newton's second law, that the summation F is the summation of m d2r by dt square, d2r dash by dt square, that is d2r dash. Let's see what is d2r dash by dt square. So d2r dash by dt square, so basically d2r dash by this one, let's see, d2r dash by dt square is basically this one, right? d2r dash by dt square is basically nothing but the acceleration of the point mass particle p when observed from non-inertial frame of reference o dash, x dash, y dash, z dash. Okay, so this one, oh sorry, this one is acceleration of the particle as observed from non-inertial frame of reference o dash, x dash, y dash, z dash. Oh, and what is this mdt summation of F? This one is total external force. And one amazing thing is you can see that this one is a Newton that has to be that is also present. So if someone has to apply Newton's second law from like if someone doesn't knows that okay, Newton's second law is only valid for an inertial frame of reference, then he will just write summation F equals to m d2 r dash by dt square. But this is wrong, because this thing is observed from non-inertial frame of reference. So in that case, if we have to frame some kind of Newton's second law, an equivalent form of Newton's second law for non-inertial frame, then we have to frame in such a way that summation F equal to mass into acceleration as observed from non-inertial frame of reference. In that case, let's see how we can frame that kind of an equivalent form of Newton's second law. So in that case, let's move this term to LHS. So in that case, summation F minus m d2 by dt square of d2 by dt square of o dash that is equals to m d2 r dash by dt square, m d2 r dash by dt square. So here you can see that this term especially not this term, this thing is acceleration measured from non-inertial frame o dash, x dash, y dash, z dash, and this one is an additional term, and this one is the total force acting on the body or system. So you can see that we have to add one external force. And what is this one? Let's analyze this term. So this one, you can see that this, especially this term, what is this one? So this is nothing. You can see this one is what is d2o dash by dt square. d2o dash by dt square. O dash is nothing but the position vector. This one is the position vector of the non-inertial frame of reference as measured from non-inertial frame, as measured from inertial frame of reference. So in that case, this d2o dash by d2o dash by dt square will be the acceleration of the non-inertial frame of reference when measured from inertial frame. So that will be this one, acceleration of non-inertial frame o dash x dash y dash z dash when measured from inertial frame o x y z. So eventually this term acceleration multiplied by mass, we will consider some kind of an equivalent force, and we will call this force as pseudo force. So because this force is someone sitting in a non-inertial frame wouldn't physically know, wouldn't physically see this kind of force acting on the body. So that's why this force is called as pseudo force. So in order to write an equivalent form of Newton's second law for non-inertial frame of reference, we have to say m d2 r dash I have to say m d2 by dt square of r dash equals to, we have to add sum of all the forces, and we have to include one more force, and that will be m a o dash. So we have to include this external, not external, this one, something called like something additional force, which we'll call as pseudo force. So basically this equation is only valid for the case of for the case when the non-inertial frame is translating with respect to the inertial frame. Now there is one more interesting thing that I want to discuss, and that is even though the net external force acting on the net external force acting on the body as observed from non-inertial frame of reference is 0, even in that case the body may move. For example, I have discussed the example of you driving in a car. Like if you, even though the external force as observed by you acting on the book inside the car will be 0, but still there is some kind of acceleration that you observe. So, and I have discussed this example in my earlier video of Newton's first law. So let's see. So in that case, for example, car, you are driving inside the car, there is one seat belt, there is one book placed towards the back side of the car, and the car is moving, and you suddenly apply brake, and in that case, for the case for now we are neglecting the friction that is present between the book and the car seat. So in that case, when we want to apply, we have already seen that even though from Newton's first while discussing our Newton's first law of motion, that even though there is no net external force acting on the system on the book, but still the book was moving. So we are trying to find an explanation for that phenomena. So we already know that since we are applying the brake, and uh, when we are observing uh, the book from inside the car, then that frame is itself non-inertial. In that case, we'll apply an equivalent form of Newton's second law, that is this one: m d2 by dt square r dash equals to summation f, and one more external pseudo force m a o dash. And what is this? This thing is nothing but the deceleration or negative acceleration of the car when you are applying the brakes. So and this one, summation f, this one is 0. In this case, this implies that m d2 by dt square of r dash equals to minus m a o dash. So you can see that cancels that. You can see that d2 by dt square of r dash equals to a o dash minus a o dash. So you can see that what is this one? This one is the acceleration of the book. And what is this one? This one is the acceleration of the non-inertial frame. So we conclude that that the even though the net external force acting on the book is 0, but still the book starts to slip forward when we apply the brake, because of the deceleration of the car. And we applied an equivalent form of Newton's second law to explain this phenomena. Yeah, so this is what I wanted to discuss in this video. Let's end this video.